Live from downtown Bloomington, this is IU Sports Sunday with Nick Rodacap on 98.7 The Zone.
Good morning and welcome to IU Sports Sunday here on 98.7 The Zone. Nick Rodacap with you. Thanks so much for joining us. I have officially graduated from this great university, and it is insane to think about that. I've got something in my ear right now, and I don't know why, but give me a second. I will figure it out. I think I just did figure it out, so I apologize for that. But yes, I've officially graduated from Indiana University. And unlike some of my classmates, I was not out until 6 a.m. last night because I had to be here. And the show goes on. The show goes on regardless of whether or not I graduate or any other significant event happens. It's been a heck of a ride since September of 2024. When I first started this show, and it's given me a whole new glimpse into the world of sports media. It's given me a new opportunity to learn about something that I didn't know if I was going to like, to be honest. I didn't know if I was going to like hosting a talk show, but I've quite enjoyed it. So let's dive in. Let's begin this morning talking about the good. Let's talk about the good first, because last night at Memorial Stadium was a cause for celebration in that, of course, 8,000-ish undergraduate students earned degrees. I don't know officially how many there were. I just know that I was one among quite a few. Memorial Stadium was packed, almost looked like a Kurt Cignetti non-conference game in 2025 before things really took off for Indiana football. We will start with IU softball, because IU softball has plenty to celebrate. They will be in the NCAA tournament. It is a question of where they will go. IU softball bowing out of the Big Ten tournament in the semifinals to the eventual champions in Nebraska. Indiana, in the first game of Big Ten tournament action, they got a first-round bye. So it was the second round of the Big Ten tournament. They took down number 5 seed Washington 9-2. That game was close until the late innings, but Indiana ultimately pulled away against the Huskies. And Washington was an interesting case as far as Big Ten softball goes in the latter stages of the regular season, because for a good chunk of the regular season, Washington was well-positioned to get a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. This is a tournament where the top 12 teams make it. And so the top 4 finishers in the conference standings get first-round byes. So you get to arrive a day later, you get to save a bit of pitching, you get to save your bodies just by virtue of not playing a first-round game. And it looked like Washington was in position to get one of those first-round byes. But to close the regular season, Washington played a murderer's row of opponents over the last 3 weekends. In particular, they got Oregon and UCLA back-to-back. Now, Oregon and UCLA both ranked comfortably in the top 25. UCLA was the second seed in the Big Ten tournament. Oregon, I believe, was third. And Oregon swept Washington, and then the Huskies returned home to Seattle and got swept, and then they lost 2 of 3 to Ohio State. So Washington closed the regular season by losing 8 out of 9 games. Meanwhile, Indiana closed the regular season winning its final 4 Big Ten games and, crucially, winning 6 of its final... they won 7 of their final 9 Big Ten games. Indiana won 7 of its last 9. Washington lost 8 of 9. So that is how Indiana jumped Washington for the number 4 seed in the Big Ten Conference Tournament. And Indiana then made good on that extra day of rest by pulling away from Washington in the late innings in the first game of the the first game of the Big Ten tournament, I should say. For Shonda Stanton and this Indiana team, they scored 6 runs in the final 2 offensive innings, winning 9-2 over the Huskies. And then ultimately, Nebraska is one of the favorites to win the national championship, and Indiana was shut out by Nebraska 5-0 in the Big Ten tournament semifinal. Nebraska took the lead in the bottom of the first and held on from there. Indiana just 2 hits on the season. Big Ten Freshman of the Year Alexis Jensen went the distance. 7 innings, Scoreless, of course. 2 hits, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts for Alexis Jensen, the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, improving her record to 22-2, showing that, yes, there are levels to this stuff. There are absolutely levels to this stuff. There are great teams in college softball, and then there is everybody else. In all due respect to Indiana and to their fantastic program led by Shonda Stanton, one of the best coaches at this university, Nebraska's just on another level. That's just how it goes. That is just how it goes. The Huskers won the Big Ten championship yesterday. Nebraska defeated UCLA, and it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close, which kind of surprised me because I thought that UCLA was going to have a better chance. But it did not matter. It did not matter. UCLA, Megan Grant broke the NCAA single-season home run record, but Nebraska won that game. And the Huskers are Big Ten tournament champions in 2026, defeating UCLA by a score of 7-2. 7-2. And you know, it's like I've always said, a conference that spans coast to coast from New Jersey to Washington and Oregon should have its conference tournament in College Park, Maryland. You know, that makes total sense. Total sense. So I laud UCLA for even making it to the championship game because they had to fly across the country. And when your biological clock is telling you that it's 8 o'clock, but it's actually 11 o'clock, and then you've got to play an elite softball team, I don't know how you deal with that at all. But UCLA made it to the Big Ten championship, fell short. And Nebraska getting the Big Ten's auto bid to the NCAA tournament. Indiana will be in. The Hoosiers finishing Big Ten tournament play with a record of 42-14, 17-7 against Big Ten opponents. And in particular, the thing that I was most impressed about this year for Indiana is that they went 18-3 at home, and they never lost a home series. They only lost one Big Ten series on the road, and that was to UCLA, who swept the Hoosiers. But Indiana went 18-3 at Andy Moore Field. That is impressive. And I know they got a favorable draw in terms of their Big Ten opponents. Shonda Stanton leading this Indiana softball team. I mean, you look at them. Last year, if you just look at the record, you would think that last year was far worse for Indiana when it comes to softball success in conference play. 34-20, sub 500, 10-12 in Big Ten play. But then you got to look at the strength of schedule. And Indiana played a very difficult Big Ten schedule last year. Ohio State was a much more formidable program last year than they were this year. Penn State, a very decent program, always good to be in the top half of the Big Ten standings. Wisconsin is always up there. Nebraska is another one. Nebraska is, they won the Big Ten this year. Then Indiana played a series against Oregon as well. So Indiana did not do particularly well relative to this year in Big Ten play a year ago, but they knew they were a shoo-in for an at-large bid because of the RPI boosting wins and the resume boosting wins that they picked up along the way. Stealing a game off Nebraska, stealing a game off Wisconsin, those kinds of things. And then the big one was beating Washington in the Big Ten tournament last year and then taking UCLA down to the wire. That showed the committee that, yeah, Indiana can hang. This year, Indiana 17-7 in Big Ten play, and although their conference schedule was considerably weaker, which again, you can't control your opponents, you just control how you play them. They played Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland, all those teams finished near the bottom of the Big Ten standings. Purdue had a hot start, but ultimately kind of tapered off. Iowa, same thing. Michigan's decent. Illinois, terrible. So by and large, a weaker Big Ten schedule for Indiana softball, but they handled business, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do. You can only play the opponents that are on your schedule. The players are going to play the same from an effort standpoint, regardless of who's on the other side. And Indiana 42-14, winning 40 games for the third time in 4 years. That is something that before Shonda Stanton got here had never happened for Indiana softball, and they've done it 3 times in 4 years, and they are positioned to make their 4th straight NCAA tournament, which has never happened for Indiana softball. So you look at the historical milestones, and they just keep coming. They just keep coming for Shonda Stanton and for Indiana softball. Avery Parker, the catcher from the city of Westfield, just north of here, probably about an hour 15. Well, she broke the program's home run record, which was set last year. And Parker broke the home run record this year, and she's running away with it at this point. So, all told, a very, very exciting season for Indiana softball. And I told you before the season, I said, hey, this team is going to be fun to watch. They score a lot of runs. The pitching is the weaker link of the two, but I will qualify that by saying that all of Indiana's pitchers are coming back next year, notwithstanding the transfer portal. All of Indiana's pitchers, the freshman Aubrey Hooks, who had a sub 2.5 ERA this year in the regular season as a freshman, Ella Trout, who transferred from Georgia, didn't really do much at Georgia and then transferred to Indiana, sub 3 ERA, a lot of weak contact. Brooke Mannon, a junior, transferred from Arizona. 3 new faces coming in and anchoring this pitching staff. Taylor Hess as well. She's a redshirt junior. She'll be back. She's the lefty on the staff. Kind of up and down this year, but she had some very good outings and a lot to build on for next year. All of these pitchers, notwithstanding any transfer portal departures, will come back. That is huge. That is huge for Indiana and for Shonda Stanton. You talk about how difficult it is to sustain success in a program in the NIL era. Well, Shonda Stanton has done a good job of recruiting locally and keeping the good players around. So it's very exciting stuff. The selection show tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. That is as we are broadcasting this show on Sunday, May 10th. If you're listening to this after the fact, well, the field is already out. But Sunday, May 10th, 7 p.m. ESPN2, Indiana will hear their name called. The team is hosting a watch party internally here in Bloomington, as is customary, if you know you have a good shot of getting in. So congratulations preemptively to Indiana softball. I was one of their broadcasters this year. And anytime you post a 750 winning percentage, which Indiana did at 42-14, I'd say you had a pretty good season. And it depends on where they go. Because, I mean, like you saw with Nebraska and UCLA, UCLA was the 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Nebraska was the 1 seed, and Nebraska just handled them. And UCLA, you want to talk about one of the nation's best offensive teams. The Bruins qualify for that category. But unfortunately for them, Nebraska was a more complete team. And they won the Big Ten regular season title. They won the Big Ten tournament. The top teams in women's college softball are just so good. They are ridiculous. And if you watch Indiana play against a top team and you watch them get manhandled, you're thinking, man, what's going on in Bloomington? But the reality is, it's not that Indiana's bad. It's not that Indiana's bad. It's that the top teams are deeper. It's that the top teams have more star power. And usually the top teams are from universities where they care more about softball. And I know that might sound like a slight on Indiana, but the fact of the matter is most Big Ten schools do not care about softball. They don't care about baseball. They don't care about the diamond sports because the Big Ten just usually isn't good top to bottom in the diamond sports the way, say, the SEC is, for example, the way the Pac-12 used to be. And that's why, I mean, UCLA has made the Big Ten championship game back-to-back years since joining the conference. UCLA is a powerhouse in softball. But Indiana doing a good job. And you look at the way Shonda Stanton has built this program. I talked about it a little bit earlier. Shonda Stanton in her 9th season here at Indiana, she's going to hit 300 wins at Indiana next year. I think she's at about 285 right now, her coaching career in Bloomington. She was a longtime coach at Marshall before that. And you look at the way Stanton has built this team. I mean, you look at the amount of players, impact players, from either in the state of Indiana or around the state of Indiana. Hannah Haberstroh, everyday right fielder. Allie Van Brandt, one of the best players in the Big Ten. She was named second team all-conference at second base. She's from the state of Michigan. Madeline Strader, she's from Texas, kind of one of the outliers there. But Brooke Mannon, she's transferred from Arizona, but originally from the state of Ohio. Cassidy Kettleman, a staple in left field for Indiana for the last handful of years, a phenomenal slap hitter at the bottom of the order for Indiana. She's from the state of Ohio. Avery Parker, talked about it. She's the program's home run record leader. She's also the RBI record holder, I should say. At the top of the leaderboard in both of those categories. Where's Avery Parker from? Westfield, Indiana. So you just keep going down the list, and it just keeps coming up with players from either in the state of Indiana or around the state of Indiana. Alex Cooper, starting shortstop for Indiana, one of the anchors at the top of the order. Where's she from? Mooresville, Indiana. That's 40 minutes up the road from here. And then Stanton talks about supplementing the program through the transfer portal. You want to build through high school recruiting, which is still the model that she uses, and then any needs that you can't address in recruiting, any immediate needs, you address them through the transfer portal. One addition in particular that Stanton and her staff deserve a lot of praise for is Ellie Goins. Goins spent her first 3 years at North Carolina State, and she was a very late add in the outfield to this Indiana roster. She's been the starting center fielder this year, and that was a role that she had held for 2 seasons at NC State. Before that, she was their starting right fielder. Goins did not join this team until January. Ellie Goins was a very late add, but Shonda Stanton and her staff knew they needed to add another outfielder. They went out and they got Ellie Goins, and her defense in center field is fantastic. She made some catches this year that really impressed me. There was one in particular against Illinois this past, or I guess 2 weekends ago now, where she just went crashing into the wall in left center at full speed, made the catch, held onto the ball, and got it back in. And that is not easy. And that's one of the advantages of playing at home, is that you know how much space you have to deal with. But Ellie Goins made that catch full tilt running into the wall. She held onto the ball, and more importantly, she was okay. But Goins this year hit 300 for Indiana, posted an OPS over 900, 7 homers, 42 RBIs so far with the NCAA tournament still to play. So that's what you talk about supplementing through the transfer portal for Indiana softball. And Ella Trout, another one. Trout, somebody who transferred in from Georgia, and she didn't play much at Georgia whatsoever. A limited sample size, 6 appearances, and a 7.68 ERA in 13.2 innings. Not something that a lot of people would look at and say, that's somebody I want to go get in the transfer portal. But Shonda Stanton, she saw something in Ella Trout. And Trout, only a freshman at Georgia, transferring out after 1 year. And the key that Stanton found with Trout, even though she's from the state of Florida and she played at an SEC school, the key was she had familial ties to Central Indiana. Some of her extended family lived up here. So Trout came to Bloomington, and she said that it basically felt like home, even though she's from Florida. She talked about how having her family be able to go to games was such a game changer. And she led Indiana in innings pitched in the regular season, over 100 innings. She was the only Indiana pitcher to throw over 100 innings, which speaks to the depth on this pitching staff, which is why I think it's so important that they're coming back. All the key contributors to this Indiana pitching staff are coming back next year. Trout, 109 innings pitched, a 2.83 ERA and 36 appearances. A mixture. She had 16 starts, 36 appearances overall. And you look at this Indiana team, the pitchers don't strike a lot of people out, which can be a problem at times because you need some of that swing and miss stuff. And that might be an area where you look for a little bit of improvement in year 2 of this pitching staff. Again, freshman, sophomore, redshirt, junior, they're all coming back. Because sometimes you just need to get a whiff, a swing and a miss. And if you can't get that, you're going to give up a lot of hard contact. And sometimes Indiana can get burned, can get ambushed by the long ball. Indiana was bottom 5 in the Big Ten in strikeout rate, strikeouts per 7 innings this year. So that's something that you want to see them maybe look to address in the transfer portal. But the offense is going to be there because the two of the 3 best offensive players, 3 of the best 4 hitters in this lineup are coming back next year as well. Allie Van Brandt, second team All Big Ten second baseman. Alex Cooper, the shortstop, and Josie Bird at first base. All of them have an OPS at or above 1,100. And for them being the 3 of the 4 sort of big boppers of this lineup, if you will, the ones who can do a lot of damage very quickly when it comes to stealing bases, hitting for extra bases, and just ambushing pitchers, it's going to be so important for them coming back next year as well because they expect to make the NCAA tournament. They expect to contend in the Big Ten. That's just how it is. And that was not always the standard for Indiana softball, but now it absolutely has become that over the last handful of years. And I get a massive credit to Shonda Stanton and this Indiana staff and the players, obviously. I mean, being a student athlete at any school is a full-time job. And at a Big Ten school where you're competing against some of the best teams in the country as far as softball goes, it's no easy feat. But Indiana did a very good job in the regular season, 40 wins for the 3rd time in 4 years, and they are headed to the NCAA tournament for the 4th straight year. Neither of those things have ever happened before Shonda Stanton got here, but Stanton has done it. And the selection show again tonight at 7 Eastern on ESPN2. And that is where Indiana will see where they are going. And last year, Indiana stayed, I don't know if you want to call it close to home. I guess relatively speaking it was. Indiana was in the Fayetteville Regional. Arkansas, Oklahoma State, St. Louis were the other 3. Indiana lost the first game to Oklahoma State, staved off elimination against St. Louis, and then ultimately got bounced by Oklahoma State. So I don't know where exactly they might go. I mean, you can look at projections, but the fact of the matter is there are so many variables at play that it's not always easy to predict. I mean, if you want to go historical precedent, a couple years ago, Indiana went to the Columbia Regional in Missouri. That was in 2024. You go back to 2023 for Indiana softball. The Hoosiers went to the Knoxville Regional. So it seems like the committee wants to keep them relatively close to Bloomington. I say relatively. I mean, when you think of close cities, you don't think of Fayetteville, Arkansas. But Knoxville, Columbia, within sort of reasonable distance. I would expect that is probably going to be something similar to what you'll see this year, but only time will tell. The selection show coming up at 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. Indiana softball, 40 wins for the third time in 4 years under head coach Sean DeStanton. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotocap with you. I told you I would start with the good, and I did. I started with IU softball, and, well, as I've said throughout this year, because it remains true, IU softball is easy to talk about because they are consistent. You know roughly what you're going to get out of them every year, and the coaching staff knows how to run things, and the players play well consistently. Sure, they have down games, but that's how it goes in any sport, especially a sport like softball. Sometimes you just run into a buzzsaw, and that happens. But the thing about IU softball is that they put on a good show. It's a good product to watch. It's a fun product to broadcast. Buckle your seatbelts, take a deep breath, because I cannot say the same about Indiana baseball. I can't. Look, when this team started the season down in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, they lost the first 2 games. They got run-ruled to lose the series. And then what happened in the series opener went viral on social media because Indiana was leading in the bottom of the 9th. North Carolina had the bases loaded with 2 outs. Indiana was looking to steal a game off the Tar Heels, who are one of college baseball's best teams year in and year out. A perennial power in the ACC, seemingly always a contender to make it to Omaha and to the Men's College World Series. Indiana was leading 3-2. Tar Heels, bases loaded, 2 outs, bottom 9. A roller to the right side. Second baseman Aiden Stewart over to pick it up. His throw to first, closer to the right field grass than it was to first baseman Jake Hanley, who stands at about 6'5". The throw goes up the line, 2 runs score, and North Carolina ties it. So Indiana led 3-1, I beg your pardon, leading 3-1 in the 9th. North Carolina ties it on a throwing error by the second baseman, Aiden Stewart. And Indiana, by virtue of having a surefire win slip away, loses a couple innings later on a walk-off solo shot from Macon Winslow. Okay, well, it's 1 week into the season. You're 1-2. Big deal. Baseball's a long season. College baseball season is 55, 60 games, somewhere in there. You've got a long way to go. Sure, would you have liked to steal a game off North Carolina? Yes, because that would be something that the selection committee would look on Selection Sunday and say, oh, well, this Indiana team took a game off North Carolina in Chapel Hill. That's a resume-boosting win. The metrics would love that win. RPI, as flawed as it is, would love a win against North Carolina, but that's okay. You've got other opportunities, right? Okay, Indiana goes down to Jacksonville, Florida, second weekend of the season. Sure, they won a midweek game against Bradley. Am I supposed to be impressed? Bradley sucks. It's an early season midweek. It's a home opener. You schedule a cupcake. That's fine. Indiana goes down to Jacksonville, second weekend of the season, the Live Like Lou Jacksonville Baseball Classic. First game on the docket, defending national champion LSU, coached by Jay Johnson. LSU takes a 1-0 lead in the first. They lead 2-0 heading into the bottom of the third. Indiana explodes for a 3 spot. RBI knocks from Hogan Denny, Braden Ricketts. So great. It's 3-2 after 3. LSU responds in the 5th. Couple runs. They lead 4-3. Go to the 7th inning stretch. Indiana punches right back. Trailing 4-3, heading into the bottom of the 7th. Indiana scores a couple more. RBI ground out from Will Moore and Hogan Denny with another knock. 2 strikes on him as well. Indiana takes a 5-4 lead. Okay, great. So Jeff Mercer's Indiana team has LSU on the ropes, the defending national champions. Does this sound like the North Carolina game where if you win, it's going to benefit you quite a bit? Yeah. Chance to knock off one of the best programs, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Sounds like a pretty good opportunity to me. Hopefully it doesn't slip away. Going to the 8th, leading 5-4. Oh, no. LSU scores 9 runs. 9 runs. 3-run homer, RBI double, bunt single, scoring 2. RBI ground out, knock up the middle. A 9 spot for LSU. And after 8, they lead 13-5, an inning that they entered trailing 5-4. Indiana gives up 9 runs and ultimately goes on to lose 14-7. That's not good. That is not good whatsoever. But it's one game. Sure, you would have liked to upset the defending national champions, and you led after 7 innings, but it's okay. You didn't do it. Indiana then loses to Notre Dame after beating Central Florida. Indiana loses to Notre Dame in walk-off fashion, and this game was kind of similar to the LSU game because it wasn't just a back-and-forth game. Indiana took a 1-0 lead in the first. Game was tied at the end of 4. It was tied 2-2. Indiana puts up a 4 spot in the top of the 5th and takes a 6-2 lead. Okay, great. Big swing of the bat, 3-run double from Cooper Malamazian. Indiana leads 7-3 and then 8-3 in the 7th, scoring a couple more times, trading runs with Notre Dame in the middle innings, leading 8-3 at the stretch. Notre Dame then scores 5 runs in the bottom of the 7th to tie the game at 8. Indiana entered the 7th inning stretch leading 8-3, left the bottom of the 7th, tied at 8, and lost in the 11th. Again, big lead, slips away, momentum gone, you lose. Indiana wins a midweek on the road against Xavier, and then you go down to Western Kentucky. Indiana splits the first 2 games of that series. And then in game 2 of a Saturday doubleheader, this is a 4-game set, Indiana loses 14-12. High-scoring game. Sometimes you're saving pitchers for the series finale. You're thin. It's okay. It happens. Reagan Rivera started that game for Indiana on the mound. And Rivera did not do well. Rivera did not fare well whatsoever. Transfer from Coppin State, graduate student, a veteran. He got lit up like a Christmas tree against the Hilltoppers. 5 runs on 6 hits, 3 walks, 1 K. He only got 3 outs, and he needed 44 pitches to do it. After that game, some Indiana players decided to go out on the town in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I don't know what there is to do there, but I like Western Kentucky's mascot, so I'll give him some slack. Reagan Rivera was put on blast because he slid into a Western Kentucky student's direct messages on Instagram after giving up 5 runs in 1 inning and walking 3. And then Western Kentucky Barstool posted it on Twitter saying, hey, something to the tune of, how about you focus on not giving up 5 runs in 1 inning next time, champ? Not a good look for Indiana baseball. Although they did win on Sunday to split the 4-gamer. I guess. Cool. Okay, Big Ten play starts against Washington. Indiana and the Huskies split the first 2 games. Rubber match on Sunday. Should be a close game, right? It's a Big Ten team. Washington's usually decent. I mean, it's hard to play baseball outdoors in Seattle. Washington, though, did not have a good start to the season. Washington was terrible. In fact, entering the rubber match, Washington was 4-10 on the season. Indiana jumps out to a 2-0 lead. Washington ties it at 2 in the 3rd. Indiana takes it back, leads 4-2 after 4. And then what happens next? Okay, you're up 4-2, chance to take a series. Maybe you make a statement. Maybe you do something. No. Solo shots in the 5th inning, a pair of them tie the game at 4. Washington then, from that point on, from the end of the 4th inning onwards, outscores Indiana 9-0, including a 5 spot in the 9th just for good measure. And oh, by the way, Washington's catcher, Colton Bauer, who entered hitting under 200 for his career. Bauer went 4 for 5 with 3 home runs and 6 RBIs to help Washington take the series finale in convincing fashion, 13-4. That is a perfect allegory for Jeff Mercer's tenure at Indiana since 2023. He's giving up 3 home runs to a career 180 hitting catcher to lose a series at home in conference play. But it gets worse. Indiana goes out to Eugene, gets swept by Oregon. Okay, I mean, sure. Oregon's good. Going on the road is hard. I will give you a pass for getting swept by Oregon because you went to Nashville and you beat Vanderbilt in a midweek. That's great. Then you took the series at home against Minnesota. Didn't sweep them. You got run ruled in the series finale, but you won the series, and that's fine. Indiana then came home, hosted Indiana State, and lost 5-4. And you guessed it, it was another big late inning from Indiana's opponent that was the difference maker. Indiana led 3-2 going into the 8th. Indiana State then batted around. Or excuse me, they did not bat around, but it was a big 8th inning for Indiana State. They scored 3 times, and ultimately, at the end of the 8th, they led 5-3 and won 5-4. So, another big late inning, another collapse, if you will, I suppose, which included a wild pitch, naturally, free bases. Indiana State scored 3 runs on 1 hit in that 8th inning. But it's a midweek. You can brush that off, too, if you want. You can say, that's baseball. Things happen. But you're starting to notice a pattern here. as far as Indiana baseball goes. A lot of big innings late in games that are otherwise close, leading to insurmountable deficits. Well, it gets worse. Indiana gets swept by Nebraska, loses by 1 run on Friday, and then gives up 24 runs over the next 2 games to the Huskers in Lincoln. Then Indiana comes home, hosts Evansville. This was a home and home with Evansville, I beg your pardon. The first game was down south in Evansville. Indiana led 4-1 after 6 and 4-1 at the 7th inning stretch. Okay, a late lead. It's close, but Indiana led 4-1 at the 7th inning stretch. Then the Aces rallied, scoring 3 times in the bottom of the 7th to tie the game and winning 5-4 on a walk-off single from Tate Deal. Indiana comes home, hosts Rutgers, wins 2 out of 3. Great. Goes to Ball State, wins 2 out of 3. Then they go to Maryland. The Terrapins, near the basement of the Big Ten, one of the conference's worst teams. The Terps entered this series 15-18 overall in the season. Not good. You're thinking, okay, it's a road trip, but College Park is a short flight. It's about a 2-hour flight. It should be a chance for Indiana to go on the road and come back with some good mojo. They won the first game 11-3. They then lost the second game of the series 14-4 in 7 innings. That's okay. You can reload. You can take the series on Sunday. Oh, look at this. Indiana's leading 6-4 going into the bottom of the 9th with the series on the line. 6 games under 500 on the season. This is a game you have to have. This is a game you absolutely cannot afford to lose whatsoever, and oh no, what happened? Maryland scores 4 runs in the bottom of the 9th, and it's not just that they scored 4 runs at the bottom of the 9th. It's that Indiana, leading 6-4, gives up a walk-off grand slam to Devin Russell. A walk-off grand slam to Devin Russell. I will say that again. They led 6-4 entering the bottom of the 9th with the series on the line, barely treading water in the Big Ten, and they gave up a walk-off grand slam to lose a series to one of the worst teams in the league. Are you noticing a pattern yet? This is why when people call for Jeff Mercer to be fired, and people say to those folks who are calling for Jeff Mercer to be fired that they are overreacting, that it's clear that those who are the naysayers in this situation saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Jeff Mercer runs a great program. And if anybody's saying that, if anybody's saying that people calling for Jeff Mercer to be fired don't know what they're talking about, it's clear that they don't actually pay attention. Because this has happened so many times. It is laughable. It is pathetic. It is far beyond the world of silliness and randomness and unfortunate events that sometimes happens in baseball. It is so much more than a pattern. It is a systemic cancer at this point. I could keep going. Indiana lost by 10 to Iowa at home in the series opener, and then lost 9-2 to lose the series. And then, rumor has it, the players went out on Saturday night because it was the night after Little 500. And then, shocker, they lost the series finale to get swept by the Hawkeyes at home in a game in which they committed 3 errors, which led to 3 unearned runs. Hitting the bars after Little 5 because you want to go have a good time, ignoring the fact that you just lost a series at home with your Big Ten tournament hopes on the line, and then committing 3 errors the next day. Not a good look. Okay, you go down to Louisville, beat the Cardinals in a midweek. Northwestern's next on the docket in Evanston. Hey, you won a game at Wrigley Field. That's cool. Now win the series. Oh, you lost the next 2, 7-4 and 9-6 to the Wildcats. You won the game at Wrigley. You couldn't win the series. Okay, so entering this weekend against Purdue, Indiana's Big Ten tournament hopes are on life support. I mean, we're talking whether or not we need to issue a do not resuscitate. And it is dire. It is bleak. It is not good for Indiana baseball because you need to be in the top 12 in the conference standings to make the Big Ten tournament. And Purdue, well, the Boilers, top half of the conference standings, take some games off of them, move up for yourself. That'd be good, right? Indiana goes into West Lafayette Friday night. The Hoosiers jumped all over Purdue. Tony Newbeck on the bump for Indiana had a phenomenal start. 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 hits. He struck out 8. Gave him everything you could want out of a starting pitcher on a Friday. You set the tone. You give a team a chance. You just got to give your guys a chance. And Newbeck did that. Indiana led 2-0 in the first, scored 6 times in the fourth, led 8-2 after 5, and 9-2 after 6. Indiana leading by 7 runs with 3 innings to play. I bet you could never guess where this is going. If you guessed that Purdue was going to win Yeah, you were right. Purdue scored 9 runs in the 7th and 8th innings combined, winning 11-9. Again, Indiana led by 7 runs, 9-2 after the 6th. And Indiana did not win the game. 9-2 after 6 against your rival on the road, with your Big Ten tournament hopes teetering on the precipice of a cliff. And you give up 9 unanswered runs in the final 2 innings to lose 11-9. That is embarrassing. That is pathetic. But it's okay. It's just one game. You got another one. Saturday afternoon. Quick turnaround, short memory. You need to have the memory of a goldfish in baseball. They talk about it all the time. Low-scoring game. A pitcher's duel, as it were. And Indiana coming out on the beneficiary end of that pitcher's duel, at least early on. Brayton Thomas delivered a phenomenal start. 5 1/3 scoreless innings. Weak contact, low pitch count. Only gave up 4 hits, pair of walks, pair of strikeouts. He only needed 56 pitches to do it. If you're pitching into the 6th inning on under 60 pitches, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Jeff Mercer, though, calls on the bullpen, and the bullpen does not treat him kindly. Indiana led 4-0 in this game after 8 innings. You're thinking going into the bottom of the 9th, maybe you would have liked to add some more insurance, but you're leading by 4. You need to get 3 outs before your opponent scores at least 4 runs. That should be pretty doable. That should be fine, especially considering for the first 8 innings, Purdue's offense did nothing. You'd think it would be kind of a slam dunk, right? Wrong. Incorrect. If you guessed that Indiana was going to win after leading 4-0 entering the bottom of the 9th, you would be wrong. Indiana gives up 5 runs in the bottom of the 9th and loses on a walk-off 3-run double. A walk-off 3-run double from Brandon Rogers. Losing 5-4. After leading 4-0 entering the bottom of the 9th, they get walked off by Brandon Rogers and lose 5-4. And oh, by the way, who was at the center of this? Who got charged for 4 of those 5 runs in the 9th? Reagan Rivera. Mr. Western Kentucky DM extraordinaire himself. He needed 53 pitches to get 9 outs. Brayton Thomas needed 56 pitches to get 16 outs. So that leads us to where we are today. So many collapses. So many inexplicable, head-scratching, mind-blowing, mind-numbing, alcoholism-inducing losses for Indiana baseball. They are currently 21-29, 7-19 in the Big Ten. This is by far the worst year of the Jeff Mercer tenure. It's not even close. Remember, Mercer won the Big Ten when he first got here in 2019. I'm not counting COVID because Indiana, obviously the 2020 season got canceled. The 2021 season consisted only of Big Ten opponents. But you go back to 2022, that was kind of a building year for Indiana. 27-32, they were 10-14 in Big Ten play. This year, they might not even win 10 Big Ten games. That's how bad they are. 7-19 in the conference, 21-29 overall. They are 2 games away from being in sole possession of last place in the Big Ten. Indiana and Northwestern right now are tied for second to last in the conference at 7-19. Maryland is alone, still at the bottom, by the way, 6-20, with 2 of those 6 wins being against Indiana. Maryland has lost 7 in a row, just in case it makes you feel any better. So, the top 12 teams in the conference make the Big Ten tournament. Right now, UCLA leading the conference standings, Nebraska, USC, Oregon, Purdue, Michigan, the top half, Ohio State, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Rutgers, Washington, the bottom half of those that will make the Big Ten tournament. Indiana is 4 games out of the Big Ten tournament right now. And you look at how many games they have to play in conference play, including today, and I've got bad news. The magic number is 4. So Indiana cannot afford to lose any more games. Cannot, because you're talking about a world where even if Indiana wins out, you would still need some help. And there's a massive tie at the bottom. And you look at the head-to-head, Indiana doesn't have it against Washington. They didn't play Michigan State. They do have it against Minnesota and Rutgers. But you better hope it doesn't come down to a tiebreaker. And I don't trust Indiana to win 4 Big Ten games in a row. It's just not going to happen. There's absolutely no way. There is no way. With the amount of late-inning collapses this team has had, with the amount of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory that this team has had, there is no way that they can win their final 4 games in a row. especially considering just yesterday they were up 4-0 entering the ninth, and they blew it. They were up 9-2 in the sixth on Friday, and they blew it against Purdue at Purdue. That is embarrassing. And look, I said this on Twitter yesterday after Indiana lost 5-4 to Purdue. I covered this team for 3 years. I know, as well as anybody, that Jeff Mercer is a great guy. But I think with everything that has transpired over the last couple of years, with losses like those that we have discussed, his tenure has to be coming to an end here soon. It just has to be. There is no way around it at this point. With this many inexplicable losses, with this many games that just make you go, how in the world did that happen? Look, I understand baseball's a long season. I played baseball. I get it. You cannot overreact to one game. You just can't. You cannot do that because you will run yourself ragged. But when you get a 2-season sample size where your team blows so many games you lose track, when your team has resume-boosting opportunities against the nation's best and you can't hang on and you lose in the most mind-numbing ways imaginable, there has to be a breaking point. There has to be a point where athletic director Scott Dolson just says enough is enough. Enough is enough. I went to a game that Indiana played against Minnesota about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. The players were applauded in pregame introductions. Jeff Mercer was not. The fans, I think, are out on him as a whole. People have been calling for his firing for years, and for a while I said that they were overreacting, but it's gotten to a point where I can't ignore it anymore. I know Jeff Mercer's a great guy. Unfortunately, being a great guy does not necessarily make you a good baseball coach. Jeff Mercer is not a good baseball coach. I don't know if maybe the players have just checked out at this point. If they know the writing is on the wall, I don't know what's going on. But this team, relative to the talent they have on the roster, should not be one game out of tied for last place in the Big Ten standings. And Scott Dolson needs to make a change because I don't think the fans can do another season of this. I just don't think so. I don't think anybody can deal with another season of this. It's actually one of the reasons why I stopped covering the team this year, was just because I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be more of the same. Just kind of lackadaisical, meandering, and no semblance of continuity or a vision whatsoever. They fired their pitching coach, Dustin Glant. Didn't make a difference. Glant was kind of the scapegoat, I think, for a lot of Mercer's problems. But no, I think we need a full regime change with Indiana baseball because they will find ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory that will make you scratch your head like you have never scratched it before. And it's a shame because IU baseball, made the College World Series in 2013, should be a contender in the Big Ten. Should be. Not, though. That's not the reality, unfortunately. And it is time for Jeff Mercer to go. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotacap with you. That IU baseball monologue went on much longer than I thought. There's a lot to unpack with what's gone wrong with that program, though. And I almost wish I had more time. I could make an hour-long piece on this easily because there's a lot more to it as well. But IU baseball was the first beat that I really immersed myself into during my time here at IU, which came to a close last night at Memorial Stadium. And I saw this program when it was at its very best post-COVID under Jeff Mercer. 2019, admittedly, was before my time, given I was a freshman in high school when they won the Big Ten. That's how long it's been. I was a freshman in high school when they won the Big Ten. I am now a senior, graduated senior from college, which feels really weird to say. But I saw this program when it was at its best post-COVID under Jeff Mercer. And, they were within a game. And I say this because Luke Sennard tore his UCL against West Virginia in the Lexington Regional. Sennard was Indiana's ace. He set the program record for strikeouts in a single season in 2023. And if he didn't get hurt against West Virginia, I wonder how Indiana would have stacked up in a best 2 out of 3 series against Kentucky. I really do. Because Indiana had Kentucky within a game of elimination in that regional, but ultimately the Hoosiers just ran out of pitching. And Tyler Cerny also got ejected for something really stupid. He wore the home run chain, brought it out onto the warning track, and got thrown out. While the NCAA allows softball teams to have hats and props on the field. At least they did in 2023. So the precedent was there that Cerny shouldn't have been ejected, but he did get ejected. And I wonder what that regional would have looked like if Luke Sennard was healthy. Because Sennard is now pitching in the Braves organization, and he was a dominant starter when he was on his game. And if Sinnard doesn't get hurt, maybe Indiana upsets Western Kentucky. And yes, they get blown out of the water in Baton Rouge like Kentucky did against LSU, the eventual national champions that year. But from there, it's just like the program never even sustained the momentum that they had, let alone took off. I mean, sometimes you see teams build after they go on an NCAA tournament run and they make some noise on the national level. Indiana made some noise, but they didn't do anything with it. And now we are almost 3 full seasons removed from that. And Jeff Mercer, at the helm of this Indiana baseball program, has not only failed to sustain the momentum that he built when they won 40 games in 2023, and actually had a shot to make some real noise when it comes to winning the Big Ten title in the regular season, not in the Big Ten tournament. They got upset in the Big Ten tournament that year. But not only have they failed to sustain any momentum that they built, they have gone so far backwards that all of that success is now a distant memory. That is why so many people want to make a change with Jeff Mercer at the top of this Indiana baseball team. And look, I said this, I know this because I've interviewed him one-on-one. I've interviewed him in media settings. He's always great to us. I'm not going to say he's a straight shooter because sometimes he does fall into these cliches saying, yeah, sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes things don't happen. Sometimes that's just baseball. Sometimes he falls into those cliches. But he seems like a nice guy. I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. He seems like a pretty nice guy. He's a decent recruiter. Indiana has a number of top 25 recruiting classes, but he never does anything with them at this point. Again, the recruiting classes, the talent level has stayed the same. They have gone backwards as a program. They have blown back-to-back colossal leads. They were up 9-2 after 6 on the road against Purdue. They were up 4-0 going into the 9th on the road against Purdue, and they lost both of those games. And I honestly think at this point, you're seeing more people come out of the woodwork just because there is no world where losing to Purdue is okay. And if that's what it takes, then so be it. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotacap with you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the show. Graduation was last night here in Bloomington, and I was part of the about 8,000-ish, 9,000, somewhere around there, students who got their degrees, and it still hasn't set in. It still has not set in that I am an IU alum now. It's kind of like the national championship in football, where I was in Miami, I was on the field at the end of the game, watching the confetti, and I was in Atlanta for the Peach Bowl, and I was in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl, and I was at Lucas Oil for the Big Ten Championship. I was working, I was broadcasting, I was writing, I was shooting video. Well, actually, I wasn't shooting video in the postseason. I was on the field for the D'Angelo Pons punt block against Illinois, and so many other amazing memories. And it still hasn't set in that Indiana University football won a national championship. And I think that's kind of how the feeling is going to be for graduation as well. I don't know when the feeling is going to hit. Maybe it's when August comes around and I don't have a class schedule to put into my calendar. I don't have Canvas assignments to do. By the way, Canvas got hacked, so I still do not have my final grades for a class that is required for me to graduate. There were some assignments that hadn't been graded. I needed a C- in the class. I should be fine. I had a 96. But you never know. Sometimes things can take you by surprise. But Canvas getting hacked was kind of funny. I think maybe when I delete Canvas off my phone and off my laptop for the final time, that might be when it'll set in. I don't know. If anybody has any words of wisdom as to when it sets in that you are an IU alum, feel free to pass it my way on Twitter, at Nick Rotacap, NickRodecap. I don't know. I don't know when it's going to set in, but I don't know if it'll ever set in. Maybe it'll be when I'm not covering football in the fall, when I'm not covering anything IU related. I really, it's just incredible that the best 4 years of your life can end on a random Friday, a random Saturday in May. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. I mean, it's wild because it went by so fast. It went by so fast. When I got to IU, the thought that I could have my own radio show where I talk about IU sports, that thought never crossed my mind. I was not nearly as comfortable behind a microphone when I started at IU as I am now. And obviously you want to see some sort of growth over the course of 8 semesters, right? If you don't see any growth, I think maybe you should consider a career change. At least that's what I would have told myself. But when I came into IU, I wanted to be a writer. And I still like writing. I loved what I think that was one of the plus sides of the College Football Playoff Committee not allowing us to take video of the games like we did in the regular season, because my outlet, the Hoosier Network, we do packages for every game. We do features, that kind of thing, and that requires, shooting video on the sidelines like you would see a local news station do. But because we couldn't do that, at least for me, it forced me to find new things to write about and not get stuck in the same formula of, oh, here's a column, here's a game recap, that sort of thing. It gave me more time, especially because I didn't have any homework to do since this was over Christmas break. It gave me more time to really dive in and to write some really cool stories. And I love writing. But what I want to do now, and what I've really fallen in love with over the last 4 years, is play-by-play and just using my voice as a broadcaster. And I have been hosting this show for 2 academic years. When I say 2 years, I mean I started in the fall of 2024, which was the beginning of my junior year. And that just so happened to be probably the best time to do it because of the, I'll say, regime change, coaching change that took place with Indiana football. That coincided with the start of the Curt Cignetti era. And being able to sort of reflect on those games as they unfolded, it helped that this show, being on a Sunday morning, was always in the immediate aftermath of football games. I mean, the only thing that would be better would be Saturday afternoon, but I was covering the game, so that wouldn't happen, obviously. But Sunday morning, everybody wants to hear about football. We would react to selection committee rankings. Actually, those would not have come out yet, but the projected rankings and, dunk on people who didn't know what they were talking about and refused to give Indiana credit and all these sorts of things. And I found that I really like using my voice. And it's something that if I didn't have this show, maybe I wouldn't have found that, because I was still very entrenched in play-by-play throughout my time here, and I did a ton of stuff on student radio and Big Ten Plus and all these sorts of things. Got to broadcast so many amazing games from so many historic venues, so many storied college campuses across the country. And I will always love play-by-play, and ultimately that's what I want to do. But this show allowed me to sort of express those thoughts in a different way, because when you're in play-by-play, when you're broadcasting, you don't really want to editorialize things too much. I mean, obviously, you have a little bit of leeway with student radio being what it is, but at the end of the day, you want to be professional, and you want to put professional-sounding audio on a reel. But with this show, it allowed me to sort of find my voice and find my personality a little bit. And I am very, very grateful to those who gave me the opportunity to do so. As far as getting this gig, it actually started because of a class that I took my freshman year. It was in the spring of 2023. And I came in here with a lot of credits that transferred from high school via AP classes. So I was starting out academically as a sophomore because I had over 30 credits. Or should I say sophomore? Chuck Crabb, thank you. But I started out as a sophomore, so that gave me the opportunity to take some higher level classes as a freshman. So one of those classes was sportscasting with Jeremy Gray, who is high up in the athletic department, and he teaches a sportscasting class because he was once upon a time a sportscaster himself. And so he teaches a class. Basically, you learn on-camera skills and things of that nature, highlight reads, interviewing, kind of basic stuff. But the class was predominantly juniors and seniors. And we got to our final highlight read of the semester, which was the Chiefs and the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. Yeah, remember when the Bengals were that good? That was the game where Joseph Asai had a late hit on Patrick Mahomes, and that led to Harrison Butker kicking the game-winning field goal. We did that highlight read. And throughout the semester, Jeremy had been complimentary of me, but he would give people feedback kind of in the moment once they finished their final reads of the semester. It was our final project of sorts. And I did that read, which is actually one of the most viewed videos on my YouTube channel. I don't know if it's still publicly listed, but it's got about 10,000 views. I did that read, and he told me he did not have any critiques. And that sort of belief, I had never experienced that from... I don't think many people whose voices carried as much weight, because, I mean, Jeremy is somebody, as far as media school professors go, he's not a professor in the media school. He just teaches the class. The professor thing is not his main job. But for Jeremy to give me that confidence was huge. It was huge because, when you're a freshman in a room full of juniors and seniors, and as a freshman in the media school, it's a very small social circle, and if you're not in it, you sort of feel like you kind of have imposter syndrome if you're not in the clique. And I absolutely felt like I had imposter syndrome for a while, like I didn't really belong. But Jeremy gave me the belief and said, okay, you belong here. You can do this. You can make something out of this. And that was so big. So big. And then ultimately Kent Sterling reached out because of his connection with Jeremy Gray, and Jeremy recommended me, and now I'm here, and I've been doing this show for 2 years. And as my time at IU has come to a close, it is insane to look back on the growth that has taken place, the lessons I've learned along the way, the improvements I've made as a broadcaster, the people I've met. That's probably the most important one. The memories I've made, the people I've met along the way. I've met so many amazing people. And all my friends in the media school, even those who are not graduating yet, who still have some time, I told them, I said, hey, dude, enjoy these next couple years because they're going to go by so fast. And it sounds cliche, but you really do just blink, you look up one day, and it's over. But I would not trade the last 4 years at the media school for anything. I got to cap it off by covering a national championship winning football team. And who knows, depending on where IU softball goes here this afternoon / tonight in the NCAA tournament selection show, I might still have some IU broadcasts on the docket. I don't know. I set myself kind of a 5-hour cap as far as, well, if they go 5 hours away, I'll drive and I'll do the regional. But if they go any further, I probably shouldn't. Because the real world is calling. But IU gave me so much. And the opportunities that you get here rival any school in the country. And I'm not just saying that. I have no obligation to anybody to say that. I really believe that coming here, going to the media school, doing so much stuff, just as a student, being in the same room as, for example, Pete Thamel, ESPN's senior college football reporter. You see him on College Game Day all the time. Being in the same room as him, interviewing the same people, he probably got better stories than I did. That's why he gets the big bucks. But my favorite experience, one of my favorite experiences from football season was the Brian Haynes saga, which we have talked about many times on this show. And a big moment in that saga was when I finally got to interview Coach Haynes in the lead up to the Rose Bowl. And it was an open interview setting. We had an hour on the clock to talk to whoever we wanted. And the first person I sought out was Coach Haynes. And admittedly, even as a senior, even as somebody who had interviewed so many people by that point, I felt pretty comfortable in media scrums. I was nervous walking up to Coach Haynes because I did not know what his reaction would be. I didn't know if he was going to try to rub my nose in it. I don't know what he was going to do. But I sit down at the table, and on my left is Jeff Rabjohns, longtime IU reporter. And on my right is Pete Thamel. And I had to do a double take because we're sitting in a hotel conference room in Los Angeles. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, that guy looks familiar. And then I put it together. That's Pete Thamel. So Pete Thamel obviously gets first priority talking to Brian Haynes because more people read ESPN than read the Hoosier Network. And I understand that. But it was so cool just to be in that room and thinking, wow, I just got cut in line by Pete Thamel. That's awesome. That's really cool. So ultimately, I was able to interview Coach Haynes, and he was gracious, and he was fantastic, and he shook my hand and said he likes the work that I do, and that was something that was like, wow, the coaches read this stuff sometimes, which is crazy to think about. But Coach Haynes was a great interview. That was such a surreal experience, and I want to be clear that I'm gushing about this now. I'm getting sentimental about it, but I never do any of what I do for clout. I never do any of what I do for clicks, just for the sake of getting people outraged or getting my name out there. No, that's not my goal with any of what I do. And that the Brian Haynes thing was definitely something where a lot of people, I think, could have taken it as, oh, look at this guy just making it about himself. No, it started because I made an observation about something that I genuinely found interesting, that Oregon was so much bigger than Indiana. I thought it would be a factor in the game, and I never said which way it would go. And that was the mistake a lot of people made, was misconstruing it as a slight on Indiana. That was never what I said. But I learned from there that one lesson is that it's important to be able to laugh at yourself. Because as I kind of took that in stride and kind of made a joke out of it, ultimately it was a fun subplot to the IU football season. But the other thing that I learned is just that you got to have a thick skin, and that people are gonna hurl all sorts of insults at you just for speaking your mind, and that's something that I will always do, regardless of whether I'm talking about IU sports or, I mean, if it's high school sports, that's different. But if it's college sports, professional sports, I'm always going to speak my mind about it. And that is something that I will not apologize for. I like to think that I back up what I say when it comes to not just pulling things out of a hat, but having some sort of evidence to support my argument. And if you disagree, that's fine. That's fine. I love debate. I love well thought out, nuanced discourse. Unfortunately, there's not much of that these days. But one thing I learned just from my time in IU sports media, especially covering football, is you got to have a thick skin, because there's going to be eyeballs on your stuff, and people are always looking to critique always looking to find things to nitpick at. But, sometimes that's just kind of motivation. That is something that can sort of fuel you to be better. And I mean, I actually saw something in my mentions earlier today, which I thought was kind of funny. In the tweet that I posted yesterday on Twitter at Nick Rotacap about where IU baseball needs to go, and we talked about this in the first hour. I can talk about it a little bit later on. They have found two incredible ways to lose over the last couple afternoons up in West Lafayette against Purdue. And it's not just that, you're losing to your in-state rival, and Purdue has had a very good season this year. They're kind of on the bubble of the NCAA tournament right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they get in. That would really just be salt in the wound, because Jeff Mercer has usually had Greg Goff's number when it comes to that head coaching matchup, but no. Purdue has pulled off two ridiculous comebacks, and it kind of mirrors what happened in 2024 when Indiana played up in West Lafayette. Indiana pulled off two crazy comebacks to take that series on Saturday and Sunday, and the Purdue groundskeepers were not too pleased about it because they were doing their work with very loud equipment as we were interviewing Jeff Mercer afterwards. But I tweeted about how, look, Mercer's a great guy. I covered the team for a while, and I think that regardless of his character, I think that this tenure has to be coming to an end here soon. And I cited specifically the amount of inexplicable losses that Indiana baseball has had over the last couple of years, which I think is a fair observation. I think it's relatively objective. I mean, as far as speculating on someone's job security, that is never objective, right? But I thought that I gave a pretty good reason, given that it's not just that there are a couple bad games here and there. It's become more than a trend. It's become a staple of this program over the last couple of years, is melting down and collapsing in ways that you wouldn't even think were possible. So some faceless clown, and I've had to deal with a lot of faceless clowns on social media these days, says, and I quote, "Yeah, I'm sure they'll listen to a student who can't tuck in a dress shirt and mutters the same sentences in his broadcast opens. You're hopeless for a good job." Now that is a very well thought out insult. And, there's a saying, hurt people hurt people. I think that might be what we're running into here. And maybe Hoosier Commish is onto something. He replied to this person and said, "Hop off, Jeff. Log off." We may have found Jeff Mercer's burner. I don't know. I mean, Kevin Durant has a million burners. Who's to say Jeff Mercer doesn't have one? But it's interesting, because when he says that I can't tuck in my shirt, what he's referring to is my pinned tweet where I had my picture taken on the field at Hard Rock Stadium after Indiana won the national championship. And I said that it was a season that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And in the shirt, in the picture, the right side of my dress shirt is partially untucked. Now, at that point when the picture was taken, it was about 1:30 in the morning. And we had all just witnessed history. So tucking in my shirt wasn't really something I was concerned about in the moment. Now, if this guy wants me to pass along a professional headshot, I can certainly do that. And when it comes to me allegedly muttering in my broadcast opens, that's just not true. That's just not true. And I will rebut that by saying that I have always been taught to enunciate clearly. I don't know, maybe he's been listening to my stuff on 2 times speed or something, but even then I'm not muttering. I've never muttered. You're supposed to enunciate. You're supposed to speak clearly. You're also supposed to speak conversationally. And I like to think that I've done that. I mean, if you listen to the Little 5 broadcast open that I wrote myself and did live, I don't think I was muttering there. It was a 1-9 long monologue. I did it all live, and I didn't mutter. But hurt people. And so I guess that's another big lesson. We talked about it a little bit already, but you got to have thick skin. If you're going to put yourself out there, you got to be willing to take some of the flack that comes with it. But that lesson is absolutely something that I will carry with me. There are so many things I'll carry with me here from IU. I didn't really know what I wanted to do moving from high school to college. I mean, in high school, I did a little bit of student news, did a little bit of writing. I actually did a lot of writing in high school, both in class and out of class, student newspaper, that sort of thing. And I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got here. But I did 2 play-by-play baseball games in high school just because Cathedral High School needed somebody to call a couple baseball games and test out some broadcast infrastructure. And I was selected for it, and I kind of caught an itch for play-by-play. And this show being kind of play-by-play adjacent when it comes to just using your voice and talking about things that interest you when it comes to sports. It's been a phenomenal avenue, and I'm so thankful that I got the opportunity to do this show. And it's crazy that last night at Memorial Stadium, graduation happened, and now it's just over. Because, I mean, you get here in the fall of 2022, and you think, wow, 2026 is really far away. Now it's here. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotocap with you. So after graduation last night, I went over to my friend Henry's house for a little bit, and he made us some burgers and hot dogs, and we were sitting down trying to find something to watch. And, well, by the time we got over there, it was about 11:30. It was really too late to watch any live sports. So we turned on SportsCenter, and I thought it was interesting that SportsCenter, in this particular moment at least, I don't know if maybe they covered it later and we missed it, or they should have probably maybe just followed up the story that they covered with the more important theme at hand. But SportsCenter covered the fact that Megan Grant of UCLA softball broke the NCAA single-season home run record with her 38th home run of the season. They did not, however, mention in that segment, which would be the logical place to do it, that Nebraska defeated UCLA 7-2 to win the Big Ten tournament championship game, which was one of the weirder things that I've seen in a little bit. Because, I mean, look, I get it. The recent, I guess relatively recent round of TV rights negotiations left ESPN out of the Big Ten football piece of the pie. And I understand. We've seen this over the last couple of years, especially with Indiana's rise. ESPN does not like the Big Ten, and I understand that. And I also understand that ESPN is the primary rights holder for both the SEC and the ACC and softball and baseball as well. I get that. But what I don't understand is how, I mean, that just seems like basic journalism to me, is if you are going to cover a historic accomplishment, and UCLA, to be clear, phenomenal program. They are a powerhouse in college softball. They are ridiculously good. And admittedly, I did not truly understand the scope of UCLA's success until about this time last year, because I was filling in on IU radio to broadcast the Big Ten softball tournament while the two broadcasters from a year ago, Austin Platt and Alex Hines, both graduated. I was filling in, and the game that I was prepping for was Indiana-UCLA. And I had not been that well-versed on UCLA softball, I will admit. But I found out, and I was reading through and looking at how dominant UCLA has been. I mean, you look at them, they are one of the most historically dominant programs in college softball. 13 national championships, and they have been to the Women's College World Series more times than I can count. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. They've been 4 of the last 5 years, and they're about to make it 5 out of 6. Kelly Inouye Perez is a fantastic head coach. UCLA is a ridiculous program. If anything, that makes what Nebraska did even crazier, because Nebraska beat them 7-2 in the Big Ten championship game yesterday. They won the Big Ten regular season title, the Huskers did. So winning the Big Ten tournament, I mean, it's chalky, but you will see upsets more times than you think. More times than you think in the world of just conference tournaments in the diamond sports, because sometimes it's just difficult to string a lot of wins together. Sometimes a team gets hot at the right time. Nebraska made sure that didn't happen. UCLA and Oregon finished tied for second in the Big Ten standings. Oregon had the tiebreaker. So that's why UCLA was the 3 seed. Indiana was the 4, getting bounced by Nebraska, who in turn eliminated UCLA. But I thought it was just so odd that ESPN, in this SportsCenter segment, completely ignored the winner of the game in which the NCAA single-season home run record was broken. That's so weird to me. And like I said, I understand that ESPN hates the Big Ten. I get that. I understand that they're mad that they don't have Big Ten TV rights anymore. I understand that they don't want to give the Big Ten any sort of airtime, but you could even just write it in the script. You could even put a graphic up. You could put a footnote on the graphic that says, Megan Grant breaks NCAA single-season home run record. Bruins fall to Nebraska 7-2. Something like that. Or just a footnote in the prompter saying, Nebraska, though, got the last laugh, winning the Big Ten championship 7-2. It's really not that hard. It would take 5 seconds. If I can think of it, how did a producer not think of that? because they show no B-roll of Nebraska's tournament celebration, the final out. They just showed the home run, which is a crazy accomplishment, right? Hitting more home runs in a season than anybody has ever had in Division I college softball. Yes, that's wild. But Nebraska beating UCLA is also a story because they got the auto bid for the Big Ten in the softball tournament. The selection show is tonight on ESPN2. You could have had that as kind of a part B to your coverage, saying Nebraska has clinched one of, I think it's 31 automatic bids to the NCAA softball tournament. You can find out the rest of the field tomorrow night, because this was last night. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Is that really so hard? Because you could still bring it back to plugging your own network's coverage of this sport. And oh, by the way, ESPN also has the rights to the entire Women's College World Series, not to mention the entire NCAA tournament leading up to the Women's College World Series. Just seems like a missed opportunity. But, I mean, ESPN has kind of become that in a lot of ways, I think. I don't find myself watching SportsCenter as eagerly as I did when I was little. Maybe it's just because with the proliferation of social media, you don't have to wait for the morning sports shows to get your highlights. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I don't know. It's not what it used to be, I don't think. And I feel like a lot of people would feel the same way. And I'm lucky that I say I'm old enough. I say that relatively. I say that I'm old enough to remember when SportsCenter was good. When they had the ticker of the upcoming topics on the left side of the screen. It had a circle at the top. I think it rotated with the time and all the different time zones. That, for me, is what I think of when I think of SportsCenter. And it's a shame what has happened to ESPN. Because, again, I just feel like if you're talking about a game that determined a conference champion and an automatic bid in a tournament that you have the rights to, why would you not talk about the team that got the bid? I don't know. That just seems like a missed opportunity to me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But I don't get it. I don't get it. I also don't get, I talked about this a little bit in the last segment and in the first hour and throughout the season because it bears repeating. I don't get what's gone wrong with Indiana baseball. I just know what I see. And I see a team on the other side of the Diamond Sport Complex, if you will, the athletic facilities. On one side, you've got Andy Moorefield, Indiana softball. 40 wins for the third time in 4 years. They will hear their names called in that selection show tonight. They will be in the field as an at-large bid. They finished fourth in the Big Ten standings. Top four, 40 wins. Shonda Stanton doing a phenomenal job. This program continuing to rise. The standards continuing to elevate. It's a fun team to watch. They've been one of the nation's best offensive teams now in back-to-back seasons. And the pitching, I think, will be better next year because they've got their entire core and the staff coming back. It's huge. It is huge. So with them, I have no qualms. I have no complaints because they've been consistent throughout my entire time here, all 4 years. They won 34 games last year, but they played a much tougher schedule than they did this year, which is why I think part of why they won more games this year. But you got to win the games. You got to seal the games you have a chance to win and hopefully maybe not lose a ton, right? Shonda Stanton talks about how you're going to win a few, you're going to lose a few. It's what you do with the other third of those games. You win a third, you lose a third. What do you do with that other 33%? And Indiana softball does a much better job of winning that other 33% than Indiana baseball does. And I know softball and baseball are two different sports, but the core ideas around them are the same. There's going to be a lot of randomness. There's going to be some games that you win that you probably should have lost, and there will be some games that you lose that you probably should have won. And hopefully, when you look up at the end of the season, it'll all even out, and you'll be on the right side of it. That has not happened for IU baseball this year. They have lost far more games that they should have won than they have won games that they should have lost. It is not even close. It is not even close whatsoever. And we will dive into that more momentarily as IU baseball looks to avoid more outright embarrassment this afternoon against Purdue up in West Lafayette. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Welcome back to IU Sports Sunday. Nick Rotacap with you. I have been called a lot of things. I have been called a lot of names. I've had a lot of insults hurled at me. I've had a lot of tomatoes thrown at me, metaphorically, not literally. But one thing I never do, and I will not do, at least for the foreseeable future, is back down from what I believe. That's one thing I will never do. I will stick to my guns. When I believe something, I'm going to back it up. I'm going to tell you why I believe it, and then I will leave you to either agree or disagree with me. And as far as IU baseball goes, listen, I never played baseball at the level that these guys do. Not even close, okay? I have been open about talking about how I quit baseball my sophomore year of high school because I hated it. I had come to hate it because of a couple of coaches who I will not name, a couple of coaches who made me fall out of love with the sport. And it took me a while to rekindle that love for the sport. Eventually, though, it happened. I do not have anywhere near the athletic ability that any college baseball player, be it JUCO, NAIA, D3, D2, or D1 has. And I never will. But I feel like that doesn't disqualify me from speaking on something which I know I am an expert in. And that is the inner workings of the Indiana baseball program and where Indiana baseball should stand in the Big Ten. Because when it comes to sports reporting, I mean, you know, you're supposed to report the scores and you're supposed to talk about what happened, but people can get that information from anywhere. They don't have to read your stories to do it. They're more interested in the why. They're more interested in the how. They want behind the scenes kind of stuff. And when it comes to IU baseball, there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that have led them to where they are at this point. And we talked about it in the first hour, about the number of inexplicable late-inning collapses that led to snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. The series finale against North Carolina, the game against LSU in Jacksonville, the game against Notre Dame in Jacksonville, the series finale, which was a rubber match against Washington that opened Big Ten play, getting swept by Nebraska, losing on a walk-off grand slam to Maryland, as I continue to go down the list, getting swept by Iowa at home, losing the next two against Northwestern after winning at Wrigley Field on Friday, and then, of course, this weekend, twisting the knife in West Lafayette. Indiana led 9-2 after 6 innings on Friday and lost 11-9. Then yesterday, Indiana led 4-0 going into the ninth and lost 5-4, giving up a walk-off 3-run double to end it. And when you see what has happened to this program over the last couple of years, when you see what has led them to this point, I just feel like the coaching change is the only thing left to fix it, because the talent has not diminished. From a recruiting standpoint, that's the thing that always confuses me about IU baseball lately, is that this team is always looked upon favorably by the national media with respect to preseason hype, recruiting rankings, and things of that respect. All of the things on paper, all of the things leading into the actual games themselves looked good for this year. Burt Granger of D1Baseball.com. This was back on December 11th. This is Indiana's fall report on D1Baseball.com. Burt Granger, in his second, or actually, let's just read the lead, because this is very fitting for what this program has become. Entering the 2025 season as one of the conference's preseason favorites, Indiana battled through injuries and a slow start, finishing 32-24 overall and 16-14 in the Big Ten. Good for sixth place in the conference. Burt Granger of D1 Baseball continues, stop me if you've heard this one before, but the 2026 iteration of the Hoosiers projects to be one of the more talented position player groups in the league, referring to the Big Ten. But once again, we'll enter the spring with some question marks on the mound, albeit with more depth of arm talent than previous years. Burt Granger says that Jeff Mercer was optimistic about the progression of some of the talented but unproven sophomores and the influx of depth brought in by the portal. Preseason optimism that has not whatsoever materialized. Not at all. Jeff Mercer said before the season, I think we'll have a nice team. This group has a really good personality. You can coach them hard, push them, challenge them, show up every day with a positive attitude and a ton of resiliency. First of all, I hate the word resiliency. It is redundant. Say resilience. It's the same thing, and you save a syllable. It's like calling an ATM machine. Oh, it's an automated teller machine. No, it's an ATM. It's resilience. But anyway, preseason optimism and on-field results have always been at odds since the end of the 2023 season with Jeff Mercer and with Indiana baseball. They have just been at odds every year. Oh, look for Indiana to be near the top of the Big Ten. Oh, they've got a really talented group of players. They got some question marks on the mound, but this should be a good team. And then it never happens. It never happens. Look, I understand that when the Big Ten expanded westward to the Pacific Coast, zorbing up the Pac-12 teams, it got a lot deeper and it got a lot harder to contend. I get that. You look at the conference standings last year, all 4 of the former Pac-12 schools that joined the Big Ten finished in the top 5. This year, 3 of them are in the top 4. UCLA, USC, and Oregon, 1st, 3rd, and 4th, respectively. I get it, man. Winning in the Big Ten is hard. Sometimes baseball is hard. But Indiana has signed back-to-back top 25 recruiting classes under Jeff Mercer. Back-to-back top 25. The press release issued by IU Athletics in December of last year. Jeff Mercer has prided himself in recruiting elite talent from all over the country. The Hoosiers have had 30 players drafted during Mercer's tenure. That goes back to 2019. 11 freshman All-Americans. IU's player development program has helped student athletes get pro-ready from the moment they stepped on campus. Of all Big Ten programs, IU just signed the highest-ranked recruiting class, according to Perfect Game. All of this stuff, all of this hype, and nothing has come of it. That is why people are so frustrated with Jeff Mercer and with Indiana baseball. Because it's not just this recruiting class that has been really good. It's every recruiting class. They're always up there. They're always hyped up. I remember 2024. It was the same stuff. The same thing. Indiana, they're coming off an NCAA tournament against Kentucky. They took them down to the wire. This is going to be a good season for Indiana. They were rolling through the first 2 weeks of the season. I remember they went down to Baylor. They swept them down in Waco, Texas. Oh, this is going to be great. What happened in the next 2 games? Indiana comes home, gets upset by Purdue Fort Wayne, and then goes down to Frisco, and Alabama run rules them 12-0. Then, out of nowhere, they upset Dallas Baptist the following day, and they followed that by getting run ruled by Arizona. I remember writing that recap for the Arizona game in the parking lot of Bill Armstrong Stadium. I think I was covering a basketball game or something. I don't know. In any case, then they lost to Troy, and the season fell apart from there. They had some injuries. But it's the same thing. Preseason hype that never leads to on-field success. More hype in 2025. Burt Granger from D1Baseball.com, he talked about how in 2025, Indiana entered that season as one of the Big Ten's favorites. What happened in the first weekend of the season? Indiana went 0-4. 0-4 in that weekend. I can forgive the shutout loss to Oregon State because Oregon State is a wagon. And I get it. If a pitcher is hot early in the season, you're a Midwest team, it's hard for you to practice outside against live pitching. You're probably going to run into a buzzsaw every now and then. But they also had 2 extra inning losses over the course of a 3-day span. This was last year. And it was so much more of the same stuff. Losing series finales in inconceivable ways. Getting close, but not doing enough to pick up those resume-boosting wins. The biggest blunder last year for this team, which I honestly thought could put them into a death spiral, which, I mean, over the course of the last couple of years, I think I was right, was when they blew a massive lead in the rubber match against USC in late March last year. Indiana led 12-3 after 4 innings. USC was kind of right on the bubble at the time. 12-3 after 4 innings in a series-defining Game 3. They lost 13-12. 13-12 after leading 12-3. Then the next day, 2 days later, they committed 5 errors in a 6-4 loss to Louisville at home. Louisville was ranked, by the way. Then a couple weeks later, they went to Champaign, series finale, series tied 1-1 against Illinois. They lost 15-1. This is a multi-season systemic issue with this program. My favorite may have been the trip to Iowa last year, late April, Big Ten tournament seeding on the line because the Big Ten had this stupid double bye system where if you did not get at least one bye, it was basically impossible to win. It was such a stupid system. But you play the hand you're dealt. Indiana, with their Big Ten tournament seeding hopes hanging in the balance, got run-ruled back-to-back days against Iowa, 13-2 and 10-0, after being walked off 2-1 in the Friday game. Just terrible. Pathetic. Awful. And then they get to the Big Ten tournament. And because of the double bye, even if it was stupid. It was really, really stupid. Because there were these 3-team pods that we had. It was round robin. But, of course, there's a scenario where a bunch of teams go 1-1. And the tiebreaker was whichever team had the higher seed would move on. So Indiana went into the Big Ten tournament as I believe the 7th seed, if memory serves me correctly. 6 seed, 7 seed, somewhere around there. In any case, they were pooled with 10 seed Rutgers and 3 seed Iowa. Indiana had to beat Rutgers to not only keep their Big Ten tournament alive, but also keep any shot at an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament alive. If they lost to Rutgers, the writing was on the wall. Their season was basically over. And wouldn't you know, they lost to Rutgers. Rutgers was the 10 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Only 12 teams make it. Only 12 teams make it. It was 2-0 Rutgers in the 7th. Or actually, it was 2-0 Rutgers in the 6th, excuse me. I remember it as being the 7th inning for some reason. It may have been the 6th. In any case, it was in the middle innings. Indiana's trailing 2-0. And ultimately, Indiana makes a boneheaded base running mistake, getting picked off at second base. Tyler Cerny got picked off at second base. Rutgers then went on to kind of pull away and to win 5-2. Getting picked off at second base in a 2-0 game. Not great. Not great. Not great whatsoever. So I'll leave it. I mean, Tyler Cerny transferred to Kentucky, so it's whatever. It's fine. Indiana loses to Rutgers. This was last year. Their season basically ended on that day at Charles Schwab Field. They played Iowa. They beat them. It didn't matter. The Big Ten tournament system was stupid. Indiana had to beat Rutgers. They didn't. There were so many collapses that year, and then it just spills over into this year. This is why the fans are so frustrated. This has been going on for years now. Preseason hype. Lots of talent in the recruiting classes. You look at guys like Devin Taylor and Corbin Dickerson, both of whom got drafted in the first 5 rounds of the MLB draft last year. Both of them playing in the outfield in the middle of the order for Indiana last year. Devin Taylor was a 3-year starter for Indiana baseball. Corbin Dickerson transferred from Louisville after kind of being cast off and made a name for himself and made a lot of money for himself. And they didn't even make the NCAA tournament together. Pathetic. Pathetic. Pitching depth has also been a problem on this team now for 3 years. 2023, they actually had a deep enough pitching staff to win 40 games and make it to within 1 game of getting out of a regional. And if their ace didn't get hurt, they probably would have. But if I had wheels, I'd be a bicycle. You have to build on that success, and they didn't do it. They've gone backwards. Any momentum, any semblance of sustained success that Jeff Mercer had after 2023 is completely gone. They are 12 games under 500, and at this point, they're not fighting for the Big Ten tournament. They are fighting not to finish last in the Big Ten. That is how far this team has fallen. It is nothing short of sad. It is sad. Because Indiana actually had an outside shot to win the Big Ten outright in 2023. Ultimately, in the final week of the regular season, if I remember correctly, they played Michigan State on the road, and they lost a couple games, and it was kind of frustrating, but you could forgive it because you knew that bigger things were coming. You knew that ultimately it was probably going to be okay. Ultimately, it wasn't just the Michigan State series that did them in. They also got swept by Maryland at home. That was a Maryland team that in those 3 games scored 13, 16, and 14 runs. Matt Shaw was on that team, and ultimately Maryland's head coach got hired by Alabama. So Maryland was a wagon. And again, sometimes you just run into buzzsaws, and that happens. That's just how it goes. But Indiana had momentum. They were hanging with the big boys. And with the amount of talent that Jeff Mercer had, that was the expectation. And no, I don't want to hear about NIL, because I don't think that pretty much anywhere you look, especially in the Big Ten, I don't think there's going to be much NIL anywhere. There just isn't. The fan support, I don't think, is there for Big Ten baseball. Because culturally, it's just not a big thing in this part of the country because you have professional baseball. That's why college baseball is so big in the South, is because the Braves, rest in peace Ted Turner, are the only MLB team in the South. So you've got a lot of smaller, untapped markets. But around here, You've got a ton of professional baseball teams, and I'm not even just talking about Major League. I mean, I'm talking about the Indy Indians. The point is, the Jeff Mercer experiment has gone long enough. The Jeff Mercer experiment needs to end. Look, you're leading 9-2 against your in-state rival in the Purdue Boilermakers, who are having a great season, by the way. They are 5th in the Big Ten right now, with the series finale between Indiana and Purdue coming up later today. You're leading 9-2. You need this series. You lose 11-9 in the series opener, and then going into the 9th inning yesterday, you're leading 4-0, and you lose 5-4. In 9 innings, no less. You get walked off in the 9th. I could at least forgive it if maybe it went to extras, tied at 4, and you lost 6-5 or something, but no. No. You gave up 5 runs before you got 3 outs with the series on the line. Purdue locked up the series yesterday. They can lose today, and it wouldn't even really matter because you win 2 out of 3, you're in good shape. Indiana is completely lost in baseball. Just completely lost. And look, I talked about the error in the North Carolina series finale on this show about how Aiden Stewart threw the ball up the right field line. Let's look at how Aiden Stewart's doing, by the way, because I ran into a manager at the bar about a month ago, and he told me that I hurt Aiden Stewart's feelings because I said in a tweet that play was a very good metaphor for how Indiana's seasons lately have gone under Jeff Mercer. So let's look at Aiden Stewart, because according to this manager, I hurt Aiden Stewart's feelings with my tweet, which wasn't even that bad. It wasn't even that bad. It wasn't that bad. I said, I played, I can make that throw. This is a perfect allegory for how Jeff Mercer's tenure has gone, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Well, Aiden Stewart, since that game against North Carolina, has started twice, midweeks against Bradley and Indiana State. Aiden Stewart is 0 for 16 at the plate this season in 13 games played. Now, he has 9 walks, but he's also struck out 11 times. No hits for the guy who was the opening day second baseman and cost Indiana a game against North Carolina. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, Aiden, but if you're having your managers do your bidding on your behalf to tell a student reporter who doesn't even cover the team anymore that he hurts your feelings, maybe you need a thicker skin. And I can say that because I've had my fair share of insults thrown my way. I've had people saying that I don't deserve anything, that I don't deserve a job, that I'm not good at what I do, that I make everything about myself. I've had more insults thrown at me than I can count. But you know what? That's part of the game, man. That's part of it. When you're playing in the Big Ten, you're going to be under a big microscope. That's how it goes. And if you can't handle it, get out of the kitchen. Jeff Mercer needs to get the you-know-what out of the kitchen. He's done. He has to be done. If Scott Dolson brings Jeff Mercer back for another year, okay, let's be real about this. Most people aren't going to care because Dolson hired Curt Cignetti. That is going to forgive a lot of flaws. And in that same vein, Pamela Whitten was booed at graduation yesterday. Her hand in hiring Curt Cignetti has masked a lot of flaws with her tenure as university president. And I will die on that hill. I will die on that hill. I was among the people booing Pam Whitten yesterday. I have a First Amendment right to do so. They're not going to take my diploma away for that. They might do some other things, but they're not going to take my diploma away. The hiring of Curt Cignetti has masked a lot of flaws with this university and with the athletic department. And with the fact that Quinn Buckner kept Mike Woodson around for another year, we could have had Dusty May. We didn't. We didn't get him because Quinn Buckner wanted Mike Woodson to come back. But if Jeff Mercer comes back for another year, I don't know how are they going to justify it? I really don't. I don't know. Nobody has done less with more in Indiana than Mike Woodson, but a close second is Jeff Mercer. He has to go. From a baseball coaching perspective, he is terrible. He has been terrible. He has perennially underachieved since 2023. He has failed to build on any sort of momentum that he built from that 2023 season and the 2022 season, really, because there was a linear progression. And I know sports aren't linear. You're going to have ebbs and flows. There have been way too many ebbs, and the river has dried up. There's no flow coming anytime soon. Jeff Mercer needs to go. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday. Before we go, a quick shout out to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day. It's in no uncertain terms that I would not be where I am today without my mom, Grace Trahan. That's how you know her. Grace Rotocap is how I know her. Longtime news anchor in the Indianapolis area. She is now at Cathedral High School, my alma mater. And she inspired me to find my own voice, to advocate for myself, to pursue the things that I am passionate about. And I am so grateful that I have her as a role model and as a mentor and as a straight shooter in my life. She'll tell it like it is. And I consider myself very lucky. And I am so glad that she was able to come to graduation, because without her and my dad, I would not have anything that I have. And I am so grateful for them for giving me all the opportunities that I have and setting me up for success in life and giving me the opportunity to pursue the things that I'm passionate about and to chase my dreams in the world of sports media. So happy Mother's Day, and thank you to all the hardworking women out there. And with that, I will say, enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon. Again, I just can't believe it's over. I can't believe graduation was yesterday, and that I am officially an IU alum. But the clock keeps on ticking. And with that, I say so long. You've been listening to this edition of IU Sports Sunday here on 98.7 The Zone.